Hello everyone, I'm Kibin Alleyne and today is Tuesday, June 6th. You are now watching Open, a program bringing the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. Author Gorick Ng uses personal experience and research to help underrepresented communities excel in the professional world. In addition to work in career development, the Wall Street Journal bestselling author is a career advisor at Harvard and a faculty member at UC Berkeley. Gorick now joins me to discuss his book, The Unspoken Rules, and what you can do to ensure you start your career off right. Gorick, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. Good morning.
Now, can you first just talk a little bit more about your background in career development and how it put you on the path that you're on right now?
Sure thing. Well, I'm the proud son of a working class single mother who left school when she was 12 years old. And when I was 14 years old, my mom was laid off from her sewing machine factory job. And I, as the person who knew how to speak English, who knew how to get onto the internet, became that person to step up. And so I spent recesses learning to write resumes and cover letters, afternoons at the public library looking for jobs, and evenings coaching my mom, all through trial and error. And fast forward, I was lucky and blessed and privileged enough to make it to Harvard as a first generation low income college student. And it was at that point in time that I realized that there's just so much that is passed down from parent to child and from mentor to mentee that makes for an unlevel playing field between those who have access to these opportunities and to this knowledge and to the rest of us who have to struggle through all of this through trial and error. So I took a step back. I pondered my place in the world, and I started wondering, well, what if I could pave a smoother path for people coming back to me, coming after me? And so I ended up interviewing over 500 professionals across geographies, industries, and job types to understand what are the things that no one ever tells you, but that people expect of you, especially if you're transitioning from school to work, which I know over 4 million new grads are going to be doing this spring.
Right. Now, I can imagine basically this is what inspired the Unspoken Rules. Can you just talk a little bit about the moment where the light bulb went off and you're like, you know what? I really need to put this all in a book and I need to share this with the world?
I'm still thinking back to my first week in corporate America when I was still setting up my laptop and my email address. I was sitting beside a colleague of mine who had started off in the same job right at the same time. And fast forward, and she ended up having lunch with one of the higher ups in the company. At that point, I thought, wow, how great. The higher ups in this company are so invested in our careers that they just take time out of their busy schedules to grab lunch with folks like us. That's amazing. Well, little did I know that that wasn't an open invitation. It was an invite-only invitation. And it was because this individual had gotten introduced to someone higher up in the firm through one of her parents. This person had had one coffee chat long before first day at the company, and one conversation led to another, until, well, before I thought my job had even begun, I was already behind. And it turns out that, well, it's not just about putting your head down, doing the hard work, and letting your hard work speak for itself. It's not just about waiting for that next career opportunity to come your way. It's about putting yourself out there, selling yourself, selling your ideas, quote unquote, networking, whatever that means. And I realized that there's just so much that, well, is never taught in school, and that some of us know through this informal education that we get over the dinner table. So I thought that I could do my part in all of this by writing down these unspoken rules and democratizing these unspoken rules to the world.
Now, I really want to highlight the first gen experience. You emphasize it quite a bit. And I think it's just so important. Can you just talk about why you wanted to include that perspective?
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason why I felt it was important to highlight the first gen experience because, well, I'm first gen myself. And within our system of higher education in the United States, as we're seeing a more diverse body of students going through our education system, number one, and as our workforce becomes more diverse, it's becoming ever more important for us to level the playing field for those who might not have access to this information, as well as access to these networks to help them get further faster in their careers. It's just the right thing to do, especially in an era where we have growing economic inequality, where we have organizations that care increasingly about the productivity and the diversity of their workforce. Well, this all circles back to making sure that this underserved population gets the access that they need to networks and to this awareness.
Now, I really want to talk about your career research just in general. How have you seen, the landscape of just the job market and looking for jobs change over time?
Well, over the course of the pandemic, I saw a big divergence between the students who have even just basic access to internet versus those who don't really propel their careers forward in a way that I hadn't seen before compared to the rest of us. So over the course of the pandemic, I saw some students, the privileged few, get two, three, sometimes four internships simultaneously because they were able to telecommute from one coast of the United States to another. They were able to reach out to family members, friends, and mentors who were able to introduce themselves to career opportunities. Meanwhile, others were fighting fires at home in their communities, in their own lives, and thought that over the course of the pandemic, that was when the world and in turn their careers and their development could be and should be put on pause. Little did they know that some of the privileged few were actually continuing to build and actually accelerating their careers. And this is true even today, where as we're approaching and in the thick of graduation season, it's a tough job market out there. It's a tough economy out there. And when I speak to young people across the United States, the biggest anxiety that they share with me is uncertainty. And one of the things that first gen students don't appreciate is that getting a job after college actually starts sometimes in the first semester of college. In fact, the most successful students from a career perspective get started right away. They're building relationships with students who are a few years ahead of them. They're contacting alumni. They're showing up to office hours with professors and staff members. And so fast forward, and they're still 3.5 years away from graduation, but they've already landed that career building summer job, that winternship, that internship over the course of their calendar year. And so these inequalities end up exacerbating, end up expanding over time until, well, we're here in graduation season and some students are walking across that stage with a packed resume and others are still just getting started.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that because that was something that I did not know when I was in college. And I think when we look at media, college is like all about having fun and making friends. But that is such a, important note to make. Like you should start, as a freshman or like in your first year trying to make these connections. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit more about a question that the book explores, and it's how do I build relationships when I'm working remotely? I think this is so important. In the wake of COVID, even though we're kind of like slowly stepping away from that. Why is that so important? How do you, answer that question? And then also, how does that work for, as you mentioned, first gen people? Because you talked about your experience and how you weren't able to kind of build that relationship within higher up, and you noticed that it was something that was kind of established before you even got there. So can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, we look at a typical college campus. We think of students in their sweatpants, waking up, just last minute for class and doing sports and participating in extracurricular activities and generally having a good time. And that's one aspect of higher education. There's another aspect of higher education, which is in the form of all the invisible work that goes on behind the scenes to build one's career that no one ever really talks about. And this is where we're talking about that student who shows up in their first semester of college, having a older mentor, having a parent be able to introduce them to faculty, to staff, to alumni, to recruiting managers, to hiring managers. And it's through these conversations and this access that leads to them being able to put themselves out there. And one of the most underrated skills of the 21st century is the art of the cold email, because nowadays you can have access to anybody. You can just slide into their DMs, as they say.
Right.
And no, and this comes to the forefront and starts creating an unlevel playing field in two ways. One is some students already have that access. So they're able to say, I'd love to have an introduction to so-and-so. Might you be close enough to make an introduction for me? And just like that, they're able to not necessarily work in a retail or sales job to make ends meet and to even just be on track financially for higher education, but they're already getting that career building internship from that first day. Meanwhile, others have to send that cold email, and that means sending an email like, "Dear so and so, like you, I also a graduate or a current student at blank university studying blank. Like you, I'd like to start my career off in blank and then eventually do blank. Might you have a few minutes over the coming days to share your story with me and to tell me and to help me understand what it takes to follow in your footsteps? My availability is as follows: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday." Now, this is the type of email that I teach my students to send all the time. It's a lot easier, though, to get that response if you already have someone behind the scenes banging the table for your opportunity to open up for you.
Now, I really like that you had something for students, like early students, but people who are also graduating. Now, I think something that's amazing is that the book is described as something for college students and CEOs or people, on their career journey. How do you ensure that you're connecting with people from all different parts of this journey towards finding the career that's right for them?
Well, over the course of interviewing over 500 professionals across geographies, industries, and job types, I started realizing that what is a must for some is good for all. So here we're talking about the college student experience, someone who's early in their career. But what I realized after doing all these interviews is that these skills of selling yourself, selling your ideas, putting yourself out there, navigating your way to a promotion, even if you feel like you're in a dead end job, navigating your way to a position, even if there isn't someone who's done that before from your community or from someone who shares in your background. Well, that's something that people face all throughout their careers. And so while this book is tailored towards new grads and students and interns, my audience increasingly is actually folks who are in the middle stages of their careers, who are facing that so-called glass ceiling, who are feeling stuck and don't know why. Well, oftentimes it's as a result of not having understood or navigated some of these unspoken rules effectively. Now, it's not just about self-help, it's also about collective help. So bias, discrimination, all of those things are important to consider as well. And those are also topics that I discuss in my book.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. I definitely learned so much in the little bit of time we had to talk, but I really appreciate you coming here. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate your time.
To learn more about all the work Gorick does and to find out even more about his book, please go to his website at www.gorick.com. Don't go away. We'll be back with more Open right after this.